Okay, hi everybody. Thanks for joining me on another episode with Get Into It with Gila. Today I have Yonina Kaufman. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Could you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, what you do, what your specialties are?
Sure. Hi, I'm Yonina Kaufman. I am a clinical social worker. I work as a social worker in the Department of Education. And in addition to that, I am the clinical coordinator for A Time Hug that supports women and couples who've experienced perinatal and infant loss. And I have a private practice that specializes in supporting women and couples who've experienced perinatal and infant loss. So thank you so much for having me here today.
Sure. Could I just ask you, how did that become your specialty? If you're okay to share.
Yeah, so years ago, I actually worked in grief and bereavement. I worked for High Lifeline in their grief and bereavement department. And I ended up getting into the Department of Education. And as a social worker, I work in East New York. So East New York deals with a lot of grief and bereavement, a lot of loss, as well as many other issues that come up with our families and our students. And a couple of years ago, I had connected with A Time Hug, and we were talking about I wanted to get back involved in terms of volunteering my time. And I reached out to Chami Friedman. She's the director of A Time Hug. And together we, first I started volunteering. I do their phone support. And I do their, I'm on call on Wednesdays. When people call in, it's a 24-hour hotline. And then we also work together in terms of their social media. They have a Facebook page, they have an Instagram page that has really been able to tap into so many different women and couples who are struggling, whether it be infertility or pregnancy and infant loss. And slowly but surely, I also do their phone supports. I do a monthly phone support together with Chami Friedman. We talk about different various topics regarding miscarriages, right? And either miscarriages or infant loss. We attack different topics together. And slowly but surely, I became their clinical coordinator. And I opened up my private practice because this was something that I noticed was a need in the community. And I felt that I was able to help this community and this small niche, this small population that really, really needs support. And we're trying to break down the barriers that come with pregnancy and infant loss. We're working diligently to support all these women. I mean, it's a very private loss. It's a very private pain. And so many women and couples felt so isolated and they felt so alone. And I felt like it was my mission to really get involved and really have the communities realize that this population truly needs the support. And I do a lot of trainings with doulas. I do a lot of trainings with nurses and nursing staff to bring the sensitivity concept into what it means to deal with women and couples who are experiencing loss. So I guess it evolved over the years.
Wow, it's such a big chesed that you do for the community that I'm sure I know so many people who need, and it is very isolating, and to have someone else to help you through it is a huge chesed. So today we're going to talk about the topic of pregnancy loss and how that may affect the woman's body image or how she feels about her body. Does that come up with your clients a lot?
It comes up as part of, sure. I mean, sure, it comes up. Oftentimes, it's interesting. Lately, we're noticing, right? So our community has shifted, our culture has shifted, right? And the idea of when a woman has a baby, right? It used to be, the prepartum baby body, the how do you get fit, get back into shape right after having a baby, and that was our culture. And slowly but surely, we're breaking down that culture by saying, no, you do not have to be back into your prepartum body. And oftentimes women are able now to reflect at their bodies and be able to say, okay, I am bigger, my body has changed, right? Why? Because I was able to carry a baby, and this is the result of being able to carry a healthy live child. And, you know, I have to give myself grace because look what my body was able to do. So that's where our culture, thank God, is shifting into, in terms of giving ourselves permission to look a certain way when it was, you know, for so long we were told that it's not okay to look that way. The only shift, though, comes in when we're dealing with women who did carry a baby, and then all of a sudden they have nothing to show for it. So you're dealing with another whole population where they're looking the same way as a woman who had a healthy baby, right? Their body changes, whether it be even, you know, the second the hormones hit a body, the body is changing, right? And that could be with an early term loss, and that could be with a late term loss, all right? And our bodies are changing. But what ends up happening is that when we don't have something to show for it, we sort of internalize it as if our body did something wrong, right? And there's that so much shame and guilt and that isolation in terms of loss, right? You look fine, quote unquote, and yet you're not fine. You're still dealing with the physical effects of a pregnancy, right? Whether that be the hormonal shifts and changes, whether it be the weight gain, you know, whatever it is that changes our body. And yet, not only do you have to grieve the actual loss of a baby, you're also grieving the loss of what your body used to be like or what your body used to look like.
Right.
And there's just so much that comes with it.
Right. As you're saying it, like I'm just having memories of like I have a very good friend who lost her baby in the 9th month, and that was a huge part of her pain, that, you know, she still had a postpartum body, obviously. And yeah, I mean, I also, my brother and sister-in-law, they lost their baby when the baby was 3 months old. And I remember my sister-in-law still having her milk, and like she actually like continued to pump and like donated, I think, if I remember correctly. But it's just so like, I'm just thinking about it, like it's just so painful. And you're so right about like there is that shift. And I think that like I've recently like been thinking about it or posting about it, like yeah, this body like birthed 3 healthy babies. Like it doesn't look the same, but that would be weird if it looked the same, you know, like it went through a lot of changes. So how do you support women through like such a big pain?
So, you know, we start off, you know, it's one thing that I can say how we're supporting women is really opening up the floor to the idea that they're not alone.
Right.
You know, when it comes to, especially in our culture where pregnancy loss was always a taboo topic. It was always something that we didn't talk about, right? Oftentimes the responses are, oh, everybody has a, you know, miscarriage. Everybody, you know, I've been through that. Oh, you've been, you know, oh, everyone, you know, my grandmother had losses, this and that. And there was a tremendous amount of minimizing on the concept of even loss.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And together there are, you know, Baruch Hashem, we have a lot of organizations that are now available to couples and to women, showing them that you're not alone, right? There are couples who are struggling with this around the world. And miscarriages happen 1 in 4 women. Right. Stillborns happen in 1 in 100 women.
Wow.
Right? And yet it's still a very private conversation. First of all, you know, and there's no comparison. It's just it's a reality. In the Orthodox world, there's no shiva for a miscarriage or for an early or for a late loss, right? Or for an infant loss before 30 days.
Right.
So there's no like structured way to grieve. Right? A Shiva gives a time, and then it's sort of like there's a structure to it, but there's no structure to it. So giving couples and giving women the ability to say, I'm in pain, right? And being able to reflect that it hurts and it's sad. That's a huge shift, because it used to be sort of, get over it, move on. It was an early loss. What's the big deal? You
Right.
can have other children. Look, you got pregnant at least. I mean, I can go on and on about the comments that are made to people.
Right.
And I can say within my practice, I can say within our community, we are breaking down these barriers. We are providing the support and the empathy and the platform, I think, to give women the opportunity to talk about their losses, to talk about their pain, to talk about what they experienced from their pain, and how it's manifesting, and how it's playing out in their day-to-day lives. So first, I just say, when addressing and working with women, it's really just giving them that permission to feel. Right? We talk about it now. We're getting in the mental health world. We are shifting, and thank God for social media. For people like you, it's unbelievable what you've done, Gila. I'm fascinated. I'm amazed by it over and over, and especially in all the mental health professionals, especially in the frum world, where so much is still taboo, right? We're still trying to break down the barriers, right? You talk about eating issues. It's rampant.
Right.
It's a rampant topic. So imagine that eating issues are rampant across the board, and then add on a pregnancy loss,
Right.
right? Add on an infant loss. It's not a competition. It's just multiplied in terms of the pain and the feelings that come associated with the loss. And body image is just one part of it. Right. And it's not just the body image. It's really when a woman looks in the mirror and says there's so much shame in terms of her body, right? Her body disappointed her. Right. And then what happens is that it becomes the negative self-talk of, I'm not worthy. I couldn't do it. I couldn't bring this baby into the world as a healthy child. What am I? Look at me. And these are the internal dialogues that we have to hold space for, and truly empathize that women are going through this, and really give them that opportunity to really sort of get it out there. And really, we need to hold that space for them. And once people realize that people are listening and truly understood and really validated, you find that there's a healing journey that women and couples have to go through. It's a healing journey. But the journey isn't alone. You're not alone on that journey. And I'm sure you've heard, I can tell you the stories we hear of how alone people felt, and how long it took them to even get through the days and get through the months, and because they felt so alone. So our goal is to really make sure that women know, and couples know, that they're not alone, and that their feelings are valid, and then help them navigate the journey to being kind to themselves, to giving themselves that grace, to sort of say, yes, you may not have delivered a healthy child, but you're amazing, and you're worthy of taking up space and being present and being here. And it's not a reflection of who you are. Your body is an imperfect situation by virtue of a situation that you're going through, but you're still beautiful. And it's a journey. It's a journey to get there. It's not easy, but it's not an easy journey. Trust me, I'm not. Yeah. It sounds good, right? It sounds all nice and all right, okay. But it's a process. It's a journey. I call it a journey. I don't like to say it's a process, but it's certainly a journey that people do have to go through, and women have to go through.
So let me ask you, I don't know if you know the answer to this question, but like you said, we know that 1 in 4 pregnancies could end in miscarriage, right? And 1 in 100 stillbirths. But yet women are still like internalizing that something's wrong with them, something's wrong with their body. Do you think that that's just a natural thing that we do? We internalize that message, or do you think it's coming from something else?
I think that our culture is shifting. I don't, I think that it was always the message. It was always like like either a spoken message or an unspoken message. Either it happens, what's the big deal, right? Which totally invalidates a person's emotional attachment, emotional connection to the loss,
Right.
or it's some like unspoken. Why? Because it's something that we were taught. A woman is supposed to have a healthy baby. It's a cultural, like, that's the norm. Like from the beginning of time, what's a woman's job? What's a woman's role? Is to have children. And again, I'm not saying that this is what the culture was. I'm not saying that this is whether it's right or wrong. But the message always was, anyone can have a healthy baby, right? It was like a sort of like this, like, anyone can get pregnant. And yet, obviously, we're realizing, I mean, infertility is very high.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a high number. It's not, it's not everybody, is experiencing either infertility or pregnancy losses, but it's there. It's very present. We know people who struggle with fertility issues.
Mm-hmm.
We know people who have experienced pregnancy losses. And the more we normalize that it happens and that there is nothing that a woman could have done to have caused it, right? I mean, I can't begin to tell you how many calls we've gotten, right, where a woman would be told like, oh, if you didn't, I don't know, a woman once called in and she was saying how her,
I'm scared. I'm
she was
scared.
like, no, I know, I don't want to, right? No, but there's so many stories. I mean, I had one woman call in. She was saying how she was so sick, she just wanted the pregnancy to end. Like she was just not feeling well.
Right.
And a woman's response, her friend's response was, well, if you didn't think about, how sick you were, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Right? It ended up in a loss.
Yeah.
Right? How many comments? Well, if you didn't, eat sushi, if you didn't go walking so much, if you didn't go, I don't know, I could, everyone likes to attach it to a cause.
Right.
When in reality, pregnancy loss, most times, I mean, there's no probable cause. And then if there are, that's what we have doctors for, and getting the right help and getting the right testing done to figure out what's going on. That unfortunately, unfortunately, women had to push for the type of testings. Nowadays, we're a little bit more keen on it. We're a little bit more connected. Okay, if a woman is having a recurrent losses, let's do some more testing. Let's see what's going on. But unfortunately, women have had to advocate for that. So I think we're evolving as a community and as a culture in terms of what our thoughts are connecting to pregnancy and infant loss.
Mm-hmm.
We really are. I mean, we're so much more ahead than we were. I could tell you that even 10 years ago, I can even say even 5 years ago. First of all, our understanding about grief and bereavement, our understanding about grief, and what loss is, and what the grieving. We don't even believe anymore in stages. I'm sure, I don't know if you ever heard of the 5 stages of grief.
Right.
Right, everyone's heard of that. We have totally dispelled even that concept, right? There's no such thing as stages, right? Grief in reality is like waves.
Right.
It comes, it goes, it crashes. The tides are high. Sometimes you're triggered. Sometimes you're calm. Sometimes you're able to be present. And yet, as much as we've gone, further ahead, we're still behind. Right. And we're still working diligently in terms of breaking down. I can tell you, we're doing now a session for infertility, but loss is going to be connected for mikvah ladies.
Mm-hmm.
Time is doing a thing. Why? Because even mikvah ladies need to be taught sensitivity when it comes to women who are coming into the mikvah.
I saw that. I saw that the other day on Instagram. It was so eye-opening what they were asking about.
Right. The sensitivities or the insensitivities, doulas, how to, work with doulas in terms of them working with women who are experiencing loss, nurses, right? I'm still giving trainings to hospitals on how to address the sensitivities regarding Jewish Orthodox couples around infant loss, right? Late-term losses, and what it encompasses, and what it encompasses for an Orthodox couple, as well as any couple, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean talk about religion does come into play with certain things, but empathy and kindness and sensitivity is a universal language.
Right. Definitely.
Right. So we are still breaking down barriers. We're still breaking down the misconceptions that people have regarding miscarriages or pregnancy loss. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here today with you.
So when you were talking about the belief systems that we have about a healthy woman, that a healthy woman gives birth to a healthy baby, right? That's like one of the universal, maybe the culture or that we're trying to dispel. You reminded me of almost just what a woman in general should look like, is the culture that I think is changing a lot. Just that, I know, I don't know what it's like in the non-firm community because I have lived in the firm community my whole life, but I do know that it's normal to think that you would be a size 2. Anyone could and should be a size 2 if they tried hard enough. And you just look around and it's no, that's not true. Women are all shapes and sizes, people are all shapes and sizes, and it's true. The more we could normalize it, but not just for no reason, normalize it based on the research and based on what we see in the world. Everyone lives in a different body size or has different color hair, just like you would have different color eyes, so I think that is really important. And I also wanted to say, from the beginning, you were saying that you give the women support or the couples support by letting them know they're not alone. So do you buddy them up with other couples, or how does that work?
So sometimes it depends on what the issue is or what they're looking for. There have been times where we do buddy up. There's so much that we do. I could talk about it on a personal level as well as the clinical coordinator for E-Time. First of all, we do this monthly phone support, right? So women call in, everything's anonymous. If you want to speak up, you're more than welcome to. By the way, please do. It's every first Tuesday of the month. So I think we're coming up, I think July 7th is this coming up phone support. Feel free to tap into our Instagram page, E-Time Hug. So we do that. So women do call in. We get about between 40 to 60 call-ins. Wow. Which allows that anonymity, right? So that allows people, if they're not comfortable. In addition to that, though, we do have a group me where women can. It's sort of like instant messaging, but it allows women, if they want to be anonymous, it allows them to be anonymous, but they can find the support. There are so many women who are joining this group me every day. Different women are participating, and they are finding that connection to these other women. They're finding that support. They're finding that empathy for women who experience, if not the same, something similar to what they're going through, and they feel validated for what they're feeling, right? These women are able to hold space for them for what they're going through. In addition to that, we have done in the past, actually, we did a get together with women who were comfortable. There were women who felt that, they wanted to be, they did different events. At a time we've done different events for women because people do find that connection. Right? They do want to feel connected to people who understand what they're going through. Right. That being said, though, everyone's experience is individual.
Right.
Right. So there's no competition. There's no minimizing somebody else's pain because of what you're going through. There's just empathy. There's just understanding. There's just a connection that women do feel from other women who have gone through gone through loss. Loss is also a universal concept. Grief is also a universal concept, but it allows them to find that connection with somebody else, with other people, through these different platforms, to know that they're not alone, to really know that they're not alone.
So that's amazing. I hope that who's ever listening could you know, if they could benefit, that they'll like take advantage of that, if they need that. But I'm sure you have many tools when it comes to pregnancy loss and like body image issues. But is there something that you could share with us, like one or two things that you have found to be helpful for women who are struggling with maybe it's their body image, or maybe it's like being at war with their body, for feeling like their body did something wrong or did something wrong to them?
So the first thing that I do start off oftentimes with women who are experiencing loss is the idea of sitting with feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, because of our culture, right? So I'm sure, Gila, you can talk more on this than I, but our culture, by the way, it has nothing to do with the frum community versus the non-frum. I think it's just a universal cultural misconception about our bodies, mm-hmm. is that, you know, we're supposed to be small-bodied women, and right, and it's feasible, right? It's something to worthy of obtaining, kind of thing. But the point is the idea that sitting with feelings, right? Giving yourself permission to acknowledge all the feelings, whether it be whatever it is. And sometimes I don't like putting the words into people's mouths in terms of what all those feelings are, but allowing yourself to feel angry, mm-hmm. allowing yourself to feel shame. Well, the reason why I'm a little hesitant with the word shame is because shame is associated with secrecy, mm-hmm. and we want it not to be a secret, right? But that anger and that frustration and the disappointments and the hurting and you know, even the idea of women, right? They look at other women who had healthy babies who bounced back to their partum bodies, right? There's so much out there. There's so many feelings out there, and giving yourself that permission to just sit and feel. Oftentimes we're being told, you know, close it up, right? Bounce back. Right. You know, these feelings aren't healthy, right? Our culture has taught us to, you know, sort of like push everything under the rug, right? And you'll be fine. Just give it a few weeks. How many women who have experienced loss are expected to go back to work, right? How many women have experienced infant loss that they don't get postpartum leave, right? They don't get the FEMLA or whatever it is that the jobs are giving. Now we are starting to see that there are companies who are giving bereavement time to couples, actually. And again, it's a journey. It's you know, one step forward, two step back. We are working on breaking down, but how many women are expected to sort of, you know, even the idea of going back to work, right? Put on your skirt. What happens when her milk is coming in? A woman's body is completely changed from all these hormonal changes, and we have to give we have to give space for that, right? The fears that come associated when a woman can't carry a healthy baby, right? The trepidations of, will I ever be able to have a healthy baby? You know, looking at our bodies, right? Being able to say, you know, will my body ever do what it's supposed to do, right? And imagine where the culture of being thin is. Not only do I not have a healthy baby, not only do I not have a baby, now I'm also heavy. Now I also gained weight. And it's like, I guess my goal as a therapist, and again, as well as working with ATOM Hug, is really giving women permission, giving them permission to feel. And being able to say, you're allowed to be upset. You're allowed to feel all these feelings. And then when they're able to really navigate, and again, that's like a whole other session of what it means to really sit with feelings, what it means to really cry, giving yourself permission to cry. How many women are, you know, they're expected to sort of like not show emotions, right? They're supposed to sort of just say, you know, okay, it happened, and now, you know, I'm supposed to be fine. Right? But, and yet we give grace to women after they've had babies, right? Our culture it's a very interesting perspective in terms of loss versus having babies, and in terms of having children. So that's one thing that I do talk to women about in terms of, you okay?
Yeah.
In terms of giving themselves that permission, right? And I find very much that when women and couples are given that space to really feel, right? So there's a concept that when you can feel all one emotion, when you allow yourself to feel one emotion, it allows you to feel another emotion, right? So when we don't address the anger, when we don't address the pain, when we don't address the anxiety, when we don't address the fears, and we don't address all of that, it's hard to feel the more positive feelings.
Right.
Right. And we have found that as the healing journey evolves, right, women and couples are able to sort of go through the grieving process in a healthier way.
Right. I mean, I've heard this. I mean, I do this sometimes. It's obviously not the same thing, but just like somebody who's ready to like reject the diet mentality, and they've always thought like, it's almost like, they have this goal for so many years. Like, I'm going to get thin. One day I'm going to find the right diet and get thin. And when they accept that, their bodies might never change, because just like you can't change the color of your eyes, they do kind of like grieve the body that they wish they could have had. And we talk about like, feeling your emotions, sitting with your emotions. Like, I know my friend Rena Reiser, who also is an intuitive eating counselor. She always says this, or I've heard her say many times, like, if you think about it, you're like swimming in a pool and you're trying to like push a beach ball down because you don't want it to like surface. So every time you push it down, it smacks you in the face. But if you would just like tap it and let it like lie next to you and welcome it and notice that it's there, it's much easier to swim with it, So it's really interesting. I tell that to my clients a lot. Like, I don't know why we were taught not to feel our emotions, or that like emotions are bad or scary or don't feel that way. But like, it just seems like so obvious to me now, like after a few years of doing this, like, yeah, I'm upset, I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm disappointed, and it's okay. Like, it's so liberating.
I mean, the culture has always been, and this is, it's across the world, the idea of what does it mean to be strong.
Right.
Right. So the language of strong is always, pick yourself up, brush yourself off, and move on with life.
Right.
When in reality, we're now learning that our bodies tell the story of all those emotions that we're not releasing.
Right.
And how it manifests in so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And we find that a lot, especially with women, in terms of grief and loss.
Mm-hmm.
When we give permission for women to grieve, right? And just even, I how many women, I can't even begin to tell you, are grieving. They didn't even know that they were allowed to grieve an early term loss. Mm-hmm. Right? Because then they hear, right, what's the message? Oh, it happens in 1 in 4 women. What's the big deal?
Right.
Right. But we don't know what the connection was to that pregnancy. We don't know what the hopes and the dreams and the visions, right? And not only are they grieving the actual loss of that pregnancy, but they're also grieving what those visions were, just like you say about a body.
Right. Right.
And holding space for somebody to go through that grieving journey has been liberating for so many. When in the past, I have a story. I tell this story a lot. I have a woman who she called into the hotline, and she says, I don't know what to do. I'm very upset. Why? She says, my sister made a wedding, and my other sister, who had a stillborn 20 years ago, around the same time when this Kala was getting married, she refused to come to the wedding. And I'm so angry at this sister for not coming to the wedding. I mean, it's 20 years later. Why couldn't she come to the wedding? And through the conversation, I said, okay, I'll hold space for that. You're allowed to be upset. I said, but I'm wondering if we're able to also hold space in terms of being empathetic to a sister that even after 20 years, she's still so sensitive to the loss of that baby that even going to this wedding was a huge trigger for her. Mm-hmm. And her way of taking care of herself was saying, I really just don't think I can go to this wedding.
Right.
right?
Yeah, that's a really interesting story. I think that's a really good story because at least for my clients, I'm sure for your clients also, but maybe just universally, like if there's something that's like really paining us, like a really strong emotion, and we finally figure out what we need to feel safe or comfortable or whatever, we need something, but we don't want to give it to ourselves because we're so afraid of what other people are going to say or feel. So then we stop, caring for ourselves because we're afraid to hurt other people's feelings. And I'm not saying to disregard other people's feelings, but sometimes our decisions hurt people's feelings. So that doesn't mean it's the wrong decision.
So we have this conversation a lot when it comes to pregnancy loss. So often, people will say, "Oh, how many children do you have?"
Right.
And we get that call all the time. Like, what am I supposed to answer? Like, I was pregnant. What do I say? And the reason why people don't say it is because they're afraid to make other people feel bad, right? Our culture has always been that message of like, we don't want to make other people uncomfortable, right? By our reality.
Right.
And, again, I'm very sensitive to everyone has to know where they're comfortable being able to be vulnerable.
Right.
It's a very sensitive topic in terms of vulnerability and being able to share your story. And we have seen over and over again how when women are able to come out and say, I've had a loss, and when women are able to be comfortable and share their pains and share their fears and share their experiences when it comes to pregnancy or infant loss, they do feel a sense of relief, a sense of release,
Mm-hmm.
right? When they're able to share it with the world or with the people that they feel safe with, um, it is part of the healing journey. And they do feel better that they don't have to keep it so hidden inside. They don't have to feel so alone with their pain. And that is something that every woman does navigate, the idea of not wanting to make other people uncomfortable. We do talk about self-care. We do talk about what your needs are.
Mm-hmm.
If your need is to talk about it, then we need to find ways where you can feel safe enough to talk about it. There was a woman who posted actually on Instagram, from what I understand. She says, everyone posts about how, good they feel about their bodies after having a baby. And, I don't have to fit into my prepartum body or bathing suit or skirt or whatever or whatnot. And then all of a sudden, this woman posted her body after having a loss. And she was flooded with women thanking her for talking about this taboo topic of like how a woman does look at her body and feel after a loss,
Right.
because it's so not a topic that was ever really addressed. And so even you, Gila, bringing it up, and this is a topic that we get to, and you opened up the platform for it. I hope it supports women and gives and hopefully validates whatever they're thinking and feeling, and that knowing that there are different ways to cope. We do provide different supports in terms of whether it be, different ways of taking care of themselves. We talk about self-care, right? So self-care, yes, we talk about getting your nails done and getting your hair done, but in reality, what we really do talk about self-care is really boundaries.
Right.
Right? So if a woman doesn't feel comfortable going to, let's say, a simcha because she really feels uncomfortable, it's, navigating those type of social pressures,
Right.
in terms of, especially when people don't know about a loss, right? We talk about women in terms of boundaries of what they're comfortable talking about, what they're not comfortable, who they're comfortable talking to, who they're not comfortable, creating just that space to be able to take care of themselves. Journaling, listening to music, these are forms of self-care. Joining support groups, right?
Definitely.
Joining the platform. And then when they feel that this is not the right platform for them, self-care is also disassociating themselves. and saying that this is too triggering for me, or I'm really in a good place right now. I don't need to be constantly reminded about my loss, or whatever or whatnot. In addition to that, we talk about finding someone to talk to. You know, each time we do have that 24-hour, 24/7, I really say 24/6 and a half
Right.
support hotline. So there's always someone available.
Mm.
But if you don't feel like you have that support system, right, whether it be a friend, whether it be a parent, a family member, whatever it is, seeking that therapeutic support is a big part of self-care.
Definitely.
It's a big part of giving yourself that space and that time to really um, feel safe with all of your feelings, and letting somebody else hold them with you and help you navigate this really uh, difficult journey.
Right. So could I ask you a question? I was actually having this conversation with two friends last night. We went for a walk, our self-care, and we were talking about like it's sometimes like we're scared to say anything. Like we're scared to ask anything. Like, do you think is it not appropriate to say to someone, how many kids do you have? Like if you see them with one or two kids and you say, oh, how many kids do you have? Is that like, should you be careful to not ask?
You know, I think that we are evolving in terms of, you know, one of the questions, one I read somewhere, like instead of saying how many kids you have, you know, what does your family look like?
Hmm.
I saw, you know, somebody said that that was a little bit more of an appropriate way of, you know, of asking the questions. I think that, I think it's more about awareness, right? Like, does it really matter how many kids a person has? Right? It's starting conversation, right? It's sparking conversation. And yes, we're trying, you know, we want to, our natural instincts, especially if you're an extrovert like myself, um, is to start conversations. Um, but I think it's also, it talks about awareness, of being aware of what we don't know.
Right.
And really just being sensitive to it, right? So if, you know, it, instead of asking how many kids you have, you say, you know, where do your kids go to school?
Right.
If you
Right.
see that they have children,
Right.
you know, what's your family life like? You know, again, our culture does that. It's sort of like, that's what we do navigate, right? Especially with, you know, when we're talking in conversation, we're starting conversation. I think it's just really just, I think the point is to really just be aware. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We don't know what's going on. You know, when we ask how many children you have, a woman who's just experiencing a miscarriage, it's a trigger.
Of course. Of
You
course.
know, it's a sensitive topic. It's a sensitive question. Uh, it's not that you can't ask anything.
Right.
I think that we just, I think we're all navigating as our culture is shifting in terms of awareness. It's just bringing out more sensitivities
Right.
than we've ever had to really think about.
Right. And I was just listening to Brene Brown's podcast yesterday, and I love Brene Brown, but she was saying like, I think she was saying that like, I don't have it right, but I'm trying to get it right, like something like that when talking about, let's say, racism, like what's going on now in the world. And just like a short story that like really brought this home to me, like really, really, really brought this home. Maybe it's just like as a maturity thing, but like I remember when I was actually out with like a few therapists from the community who I've met from social media, and I was telling a story and I said like, oh, it was before my mom died, but then my mom died, something like that. And I was like, sorry if I made you uncomfortable about that. And they were like, stop apologizing about, like, don't worry about us. Like, and I was like, oh, because they're therapists, but I was like, wow, like, yeah, I guess you're right. And I was thinking back to like a time, like a few years before that, my sister-in-law lost her mother. And I remember every time she would bring up her mother, I would feel so uncomfortable. I would change the topic. And whenever someone would do that to me, it was like a dagger in my heart. Like if I was bringing up my mom, like I wanted to talk about her. So I learned a lot. Like I don't blame anyone for doing that because I totally did the same thing. And I don't know if everyone's different. Like maybe somebody bringing it up, I can't imagine they don't want to talk about it if they're not bringing it up. But maybe by, maybe somebody asked a question and they felt bad, like saying, I don't want to talk about that, But I don't know. I just learned a lot from my own experience, and everyone's loss is different. But I do feel like you gotta pick up on the other person's cues, you know?
Right. And that's really what it is. You know, we do talk, there is a culture where women say, please talk about my baby.
Right.
You know, please don't pretend it never happened
Right.
when it comes to loss. Other people, uh, however way they're the bottom line is everyone copes differently.
Right.
And the different messages and the different supports that they have. You know, some people need to just let it out there. And, you know, the idea of apologizing, isn't that, you know, we apologize for making, you know, for bringing it up. They're, you know, they want everyone, you know, to her it was, no, please, I want you to be, you know,
Right.
aware of the fact that my mother passed. And on the other hand, there are women who they don't want to talk about it anymore. They do feel like they healed. They do feel like they went through the journey, and they're ready to, you know, on to the next stage of their lives. And everyone has different coping mechanisms, and everyone has different ways of healing. And like you said, I think you just made a really good point. We do base a lot of our experiences, or a lot of our knowledge oftentimes comes from our own personal experiences,
Right.
right? And I think what it really just boils down to is that, one, just because we went through one thing doesn't mean that that's the same for everybody else.
Right.
Just because we dealt with it a certain way doesn't mean it's the right way to deal with it for somebody else. And in addition to that is opening ourselves up to other ways of dealing and coping, and understanding other people and their experiences and their connection to those experiences.
Right. Definitely. Yeah, those are all really good points. And I think that it's, I don't know, I just feel like this seems like almost like obvious to me now where I am, but like I remember before I knew about, like, you know, my own loss or my the people in my life's loss, like I really needed to hear that. You know, I really needed to hear that, like, everyone grieves differently, everyone's story is different. And I think that it's very helpful and like important for people to hear this. So thank you for joining us today. Is there anything else you want the listeners to know?
Uh, you know, again, it's thank you, Gila, for bringing me on. I've learned a lot from you, and I continue to learn. I'm constantly learning. I love it. I think that first of all, I think that social media has opened up a tremendous support system for so many different struggles that women and people and men are going through. And people like you who have given the floor for so many different people to connect with you. I'm honored to be here with you and be part of that. So thank you so much. In addition to that, if anyone has any questions, any concerns, anything else that they would like to discuss, you could feel free to reach out to me. I do have an Instagram page, Yonina Kaufman, or you can email me, ytkaufman.lcsw@gmail.com. Or if you want to call, you're more than welcome, 646-893-9194. In addition to that, we're always here, whether it be through A-Time, whether it be through any other organization that supports women and couples who are experiencing perinatal and infant loss. And that's it.
Okay, and I'm gonna put all your information in the show notes and the whatever. I'm not tech savvy, but it will be there.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, thank you so much for joining us. I learned so much, and I think that this information is really important and supportive for so many people.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for having me.
Sure. Have a great day.